Welcome to the I Fired My Boss franchise podcast. My name's Dan Claps, founder and CEO of Franchise Playbook, a franchisor platform where we create, own, and operate dynamic franchise brands in the mobile services space. And my life's goal is to help people just like you fire their boss and become a business owner.
And I'm Christian Dadulak, top franchise consultant and co-founder of Real Franchising, a leading franchise consulting firm. And together, we're on a mission to help people fire their boss, hire themselves, and live the American dream through franchise ownership.
Welcome to another episode of the I Fired My Boss podcast with your co-host, Dan Claps. I'm a solo episode today in New York City and back in the studio at WTF studio. Was coming here a lot. I was living down in Florida for the winter, but now I'm back and I'll be making a lot more episodes here. But anyway, if you're tuning in on the podcast, welcome. If you're tuning in on YouTube or watching this, thanks even more so. You get to watch a video of me monologuing here. But excited to talk about this topic, which is how to build a franchise owner-centric culture as a franchisor. A lot of my content is centered around owning your own business, learning about franchises, but I actually wanted to make this podcast around some of the principles that we're applying at Voda Cleaning and Restoration as a franchisor that I think other franchise systems could take and apply to their culture, or that franchise owners that are listening to this can maybe send to their leadership teams at their franchise, and maybe there's ways to establish this. So a couple of unique things that we do at Voda that I think is really not new ways of running a business, but perhaps goes against the grain of normal franchise mythology that you learn at the franchisor circuit of conferences. I'll start just getting right into it. The first thing is really understanding this idea of listening to your customer, right? This is a pretty simple concept as a business. Your customer has all the answers. Your customer has the majority of the solutions. The customer has all the answers. You just have to listen. They don't even know that they have the answers. A good franchise or a good business in general will listen to their customer and take the information and work with it. And so as a franchise company, it's the same thing. What we do at Voda is we meet every Friday, my entire operations team and our entire franchise base. Not every owner gets on, but the majority do. And we have content and we have sessions about things. And we have what I call town hall, which is the franchise base talking about their wins and the things they're struggling with. And if you think that that town hall is pleasureful every time, it's not. It's definitely not. And I do what we call quick to conflict, right? If there's a challenge in the system, we run to the conflict. We run to the conflict and we say, how do we solve this? But we get ahead of problems months in advance opposed to other franchise systems because we're literally hearing the conflict and the challenges right then and there. Now, not every challenge is something that we need to solve. Sometimes it's a mindset tweak that needs to be had, or an expectation management, or a conversation one-to-one, or video content, or just coaching overall for that specific franchise owner, group of franchise owners, or the aggregate system. But more times than not, there's a coaching opportunity for us as much as there is for them. And so this idea of actively listening to our customers, which in our case is the franchise owner, is huge, right? You listen to your customers. Our customer is the franchisee. Their customer is the end user of restoration cleaning services. And so to me, the number one thing that we're doing that we've learned is that we have these huddle calls and we're building a culture of collaboration. Now, something to understand, the best teams, whether it's sports teams, leadership teams in business, tribes, whatever, the best have the ability to deal with conflict in a constructive way. The best teams, they trust each other. I heard Drew Brees once say something which I really thought was awesome at an IFA event. He said, the best teams I've ever played for were the ones that loved each other the most. And that's changed my life. My leadership team, we've become good friends. We trust each other. I would trust any of them with my career, and they would trust me with theirs, I hope. And so we trust each other. And so we can, in our settings, be what I call caringly candid, meaning we can, because we care about each other, we can be candid. We can hold each other accountable. we work in triads of, 3 members or 4 of us or 2 of us all talking and working with each other. And if one of us on the leadership team is slacking, the rest of the leadership team will tell them. And that's what I call being caringly candid. We take that same approach across the Voda corporate team and then to the franchise base. I have no issue with people being in a respectful way what's called caringly candid, because again, most of the solutions are in the franchise owners' minds. And so our customer brings us so many of the solutions, and that's helping us get ahead. Now, if you want to live a life of, as a business owner, of mediocrity and good is good enough, then don't listen to your customers, because guess what? They will never stop having challenges. The customer is divinely dissatisfied. Okay, I'll repeat that again. The customer, whether it's in Amazon, because a lot of this, by the way, I'm going to be candid, is from what I've learned from Amazon. But the customer is divinely dissatisfied. And what I mean by that is they will never stop having challenges. And whether it's Amazon delivering packages faster or better or with less issues, or packages getting stolen, or I just saw a viral video, I think it was Amazon or maybe it was FedEx, of a guy, Dana White took a video of a guy in New York City who was just throwing the packages. Like, there's always going to be challenges. The customer will never stop having a thirst for improvement. So if you want to build a business of mediocrity, don't look at your customers. Look to your competitors. Build a business better than your competitors. Not too hard to do. You'll be leaps and bounds ahead of them. And then you could tell your customers, hey, we're doing way better than the bar. And guess what? They don't care. And nor should you. If you constantly look to the customer, you will always be behind. And that's the beautiful journey of building your business. It'll be like art. It'll never be good enough. Good will go to great. Great will go to exceptional. Exceptional will go to extraordinary. And if you want to build an extraordinary life and an extraordinary business, you have to do things that are extraordinary, not normal. You have to listen to the customer more than you can imagine. Obsess over the customer. It's a principle that we've taken from Amazon or Zappos, and we've applied to Voda. And I truly believe it is why we're successful. I'll tell you a fun story. When we launched Voda in April, a backstory, we started looking at acquiring the business in October of 2022, and we were able to make the acquisition in February of 2023. We rebranded the business to Voda in March and launched in April, started franchising in April. And we had put months and months of business systems into place, right? Infrastructure. We started that in October. And we spent several millions of dollars on technology, leadership teams, branding and systems and everything else. We're very much into the business. And we launched in April, and we think we're going to be the next biggest franchise, there is. We're the next, ServPro. We're the next Orange Theory. And here's a sobering statistic as a franchisor. There's 300 new franchises a year. 300 fail a year. Think about those stats. There's 4,500 franchise brands, only 15,000 franchise sales a year. 15,000 out of 4,500. Do the math on what that looks like. It takes the average franchise 10 years to get to 100 locations. Only 3% do. And so just like every other franchise that came and went, it's like LA, you fly to LA and there's 300 people that go to the airport and 300 that leave a day, that are all 300 or want to be in model and actor, and 300 are leaving with their tail between their legs because it didn't work out. It's very difficult as a franchisor. And so when we launched Money In, I personally guaranteed real estate. I was all in. I had all the chips on the table. And we're thinking we're the next big thing since McDonald's, because we've got all of this in play. And you know what? In April, it was pretty exciting because no one was interested. So when I say it was exciting meaning it was extremely stressful. And May passed and no one bought our franchise. June passed and no one bought our franchise. I was barreling $70,000 a month in payroll, thinking, this might have not been a good idea. I had sold my business to private equity. It was a life-changing experience. I could have just sat back, but instead I put everything on the line and started this Voda business. And I'm thinking to myself, shit, what did I get myself into? And I'll never forget, it was the middle of June, things were getting a little scary. This is not a sob story. This is just the reality of what was happening. We're losing money. I'm thinking maybe we're not going to be able to sell a franchise. I had a girlfriend at the time for 3 years. Thought we were going to get married. We ended up breaking up. We had a dog. She, took the dog, and not stole the dog or anything, but took the dog. I thought it was right. I'm traveling all the time. So no more girlfriend, no more dog. I think it was her bed in the apartment. So I had an air mattress. And the crazy part of the story is people now have told me that I've lost a lot of weight. So apparently then I was a bit overweight too. So I'm like dogless, girlfriendless, moneyless. Things are getting pretty crazy. And I remember hearing a speaker on a panel say that when he started his very large franchise chain, when he went through hell, which inevitably you do as a franchisor, and this was my level of hell, he said there was a difference between being broke and super broke is not that much. And so I thought, you know what? I'm going even more in, and I dumped even more into marketing. And guess what? July 2nd, we sold our first franchise. As of today, we've awarded 100 territories from July to May, 100 territories around the country in over 15 states. Over 40 franchise owners. Average unit volume is through the roof. System-wide sales is through the roof. The company is exploding. But the reason why in that story is that we did one thing. Well, two things. One, we didn't give up. And more importantly, we listened to, at that time, the potential customer. Every time my sales department did not sell a franchise, including myself, we would call the candidate up and say, why? Hey, all good. I'm not here to pressure you on buying a Voda. Just share with me why? What went wrong? And they'd say things like, well, Dan, you seem like a great guy, but the business is just too new. And I'd say, come on, John, listen, I know you're buying another franchise and they're just as new as us. It's not because we're new. Tell me the real reason. And I would ask them, or we would send surveys, or we would do anything we could to get the real, honest, candid feedback on why they didn't buy. And then we would take that back to the leadership team and, like crazy people, fix those things. I know it's a crazy concept, right? Hear something, don't take it defensively, fix it, make it better, go back, get more feedback. Don't be afraid. Be quick to conflict. Don't be afraid to solicit feedback. Don't be weak about what they're going to say. The reality is you're not great yet, and that's okay. You just started. And so we went back, we gathered all this feedback, and we kept doing that. And I think that's really the reason that when June came, that was 3 months of relentless systems tweaking. And then we sold our first franchise in July and more in August and more in September. We opened the first one in September. And guess what? You know what happened? His leads weren't that good. Okay. My background is in lead gen. Our CMO is the CMO of, CMO is part of Anytime Fitness. He was managing like a $50 million a year ad budget for franchisees. Very experienced. My background's in lead gen. And we launch in September and his leads aren't good. And you know what? We get right back to the drawing board and we fix it. And then in September, October, they start picking up. Then in January, good is not good enough. A franchise owner in our system says, you got to try this other way of generating leads. I think this would really work. Don't be mad at me. Ask for forgiveness, not permission. I tried it and it's working. We got to do this. And instead of getting defensive or saying, you're not using our ways, we went and we listened to the customer. We spearheaded that. We did the research. We did the trial and error. We started figuring out how to do it on our own, this way of generating leads. And guess what? We now have our flooded program, which is the best lead program I've seen in franchising, where between us and vendors, we're able to make the phone ring for franchise owners through all these different paid media strategies. And if you think we're stopping now at saying, well, now the leads are good, no, we continue to raise the bar, because guess what? Do I believe that our lead gen program is leaps and bounds ahead of our competition? I do, but I don't think about our competition. I think about our customer. The customer, remember, is divinely dissatisfied. They feel like the leads now are too expensive, or there's always a complaint. And that's okay. That's the beauty of being a franchisor. If you don't want to be constantly improving, do not be a franchisor. Frankly, don't be an entrepreneur, because good is not good enough and it never will be. And so the secret to us being a franchisor really is centered around you're making things better. I truly believe that the 100 locations we have, the fact that we just keep improving and improving and improving, listening to our franchise base is going to make us 10,000 times better in the next year. We're moving at 10-year pace in 1 year. To me, 1 year for us is 10 years for somebody else. 1 year for us, 1 month for us is a year for somebody else. A month for us is a week for somebody else, right? A week for us is a month for somebody else. We're doing so much. But the core principle to what we're doing is we're listening to the customer. And I can't emphasize that enough. I started going to meetings, and when they're not on Zoom, when they're in person, and I'll meet with 1 or 2 people, and then I'll put an empty chair next to us at the desk. And the empty chair is the customer. He's not there. They don't get to contribute to the meeting. Let's remember them, though. What does the customer want? That is the core of building any business. I'll give you another example. I was speaking on a panel recently I was speaking on a panel at the Titus Center, and I said something, and it maybe wasn't the best thing that I said. And there's an audience, and someone starts chiming in and from the audience, and they keep jumping in, and what they're saying is pretty smart. And everyone's like, "Who is that?" Well, it turns out to be Ray Titus, the founder of the Titus Center, and he was jumping in with some great feedback and advice. And one of the things he said to me was, don't let your team start doing too many projects. Thought it was just amazing advice. He said, pick three projects a quarter. And I asked, well, how do you pick? And what do you think he said? He said, listen to the customer, basically, right? Go to your franchise base, have them tell you what's meaningful to them, what they need. Now, obviously, sometimes there's times as a franchisor, you have to anticipate needs, but more often than not, your franchise owners know which problem is the biggest one. So I'll teach you a little trick that we do. One, we're really purposeful about which projects we work on. I believe choosing a project is as much of a project as anything else. It reminds me of that episode in Billions where in the early episodes where Paul Giamatti's character, Chuck Rhodes, he essentially says that he's proud most of the cases he chooses not to pursue. And that when they decide to pursue a case, it's full force, right? And I think about that's how projects are for us. I have to say no to a lot of projects. I call them pitter-patter. I don't want to say yes to the pitter-patter projects, right? Let's pick the one or two projects that make the most impact to what's most important, which I'll be candid. I say this to franchise owners all the time, and I'll say this to anyone. My mission is to empower entrepreneurs to think bigger. My mission at Voda is to build the best restoration franchise system I possibly can. I do that by helping franchise owners get the highest average unit volume and the highest profit margins, and then that in turn builds my business. That's it. That's all I care about. I don't want to think about pitter-patter. If it helps you make more revenue, more profit, the business more effective, efficient, your life better, or more importantly, your employees' lives better, then that's what we care about. And so we look at projects and we follow a really systematic approach to what projects should we work on. And the franchise base helps us decide that now that we're a bigger system. And then we go after that project full force with the brute mentality, just like Chuck Rhodes when he brings in action with the U.S. Justice, right? We have to go at things with just absolute insanity, but you can only do so much. And so I would rather us be, a rifle, not a shotgun, meaning we're singular focused on one thing. We're a laser, right? A laser is just hitting one thing. So if there's anything you could take away from this, it's that, the idea if you obsess over your competition, you'll get better than them fast enough. You'll be better than your competition. And then guess what? You'll be good enough. And good is not good enough. You want to be good to great. And if you want to be great, obsess over the customer because they will be divinely dissatisfied. They will forever be dissatisfied. And that's a great thing. Relish in that. Enjoy that. Take the feedback and appreciate it because it's actually making you better. Who cares? If someone feels like something can get better, your ego's bruised for like 10 seconds if you get emotionally strong. And then you say, you know what? They're not trying to hurt my feelings. They're not trying to hurt the system. They're actually saying something that could be better. Put yourself in their shoes. Seek to understand them before you try to be understood because they could be wrong. There could be a miscommunication or a misalignment or an over expectation, expectation that's not sustainable, but try to listen because maybe there's something there. Maybe there's a middle ground you can find. I always say the same thing about employees. Good people, if you hire good people, nobody wakes up saying, how could I do a bad job today, right? How do I screw over the boss today? Nobody does that. So the chances are if your employee, teammate, whatever you want to call them, is doing something over and over and you're saying, oh, they're so stupid. Why do they not do, what the hell? Can't they? Trust me, there's a 90% chance that your system is broken, not the employee. Systems fail, not people. Don't blame them, train them. There might be something there. I was thinking about yesterday, I was on the phone with a franchise owner and he brought up something that 40 other franchise owners have brought up, but this is his journey. He just started. So he's like, hey, what if we did this? And it's like, oh man, I told this to 40 other people. Now I got to do it again, right? And I didn't want to come off like brash because I was, maybe a little bit fatigued from saying that over and over. And when we hung up, I made sure to explain, our perspective on this particular topic. And then I went back to my team and said, guys, this is where I noticed that us continuing to make, a knowledge center of video content is so important so that we can have conversations, but we can also provide content around things that, we're repeating ourselves on, right? I call it the why behind the guy, right? So the leader of an organization in a department in our company, I'll say, look, go make the why behind the reason you do things. We're using a certain vendor, make a reason video why. Spend an hour and a half, put some content together and send it out so people can digest that. People are totally cool with buying into something, but they want to know the why, right? Think about when you were a kid. And your mom or dad would say, don't do that. And you'd say, why? And they'd say, just because. You'd probably end up doing it more, right? It was like that rebellion. But when they said, listen, the reason I don't want you to do that is because of X, Y, Z. And then you were able to ask why and ask and ask. And when people can finally understand all of the why behind something, they're more likely to not want to do it versus just being told, no, that's not right. We're right. You're stupid. I'm smart. That's silly. Nobody in your system is stupid. They're smart people. They bought a franchise for a reason. They're smart people that want to follow a system and they want to follow you. But trust is not a blind thing. They don't just follow you blindly. This isn't a cult, right? You have to build trust. And often just telling your franchise owners, this is our way and it's the only way, no one's going to buy into that. I don't care if you've been around for 50 years. That's actually the number one way to die as a business is we do it that way because that's the way we've always done it, is the number one way to fail. And I told you, those are the people that listen to their competition. They focus on their competition. What happened to PC Richards and Sons, Circuit City? What happened to, all these massive retailers? What happened to all these businesses? Remember that were so big and they were the biggest? Many factors, but often they stopped listening to their customer. They paid attention to their competition. And with that, I'll leave you with this. If you're a franchisor, go and try to apply it. If you're a CEO, go watch Undercover Boss. Then step away from the keyboard and go get on an airplane and go hang out with your franchise owners. Go out in the field. Go listen. Say, listen, I'm not changing anything. I'm just here to listen. I'm on a listening tour. And I'm going to fly around the country or go on Zoom, and I'm just going to listen. I'm going to take my notes. And after 3 months, I'm going to compile those. I'm going to give them my team, and we're going to make some decisions on how we're going to improve. I can't solve everything today, but we're going to solve the biggest projects first, and then the second and the third. But that's the number one way that you can grow your system is just by listening. Thanks again for tuning in to the I Fired My Boss podcast. I am making a conscious effort to really improve and take this podcast and all of my content to the next level. So a couple things. One, if you love this podcast, please do smash that 5-star review. Give us a review. It would be really great if you could. Please also, leave us a review with any words of encouragement. That tells other people that you like our podcast, which gets other people to listen, helps the algorithms. If you're enjoying this, I would encourage you to go to my Instagram, which is Dan Franchise is my handle, just Dan Franchise on Instagram. I'm on Twitter as Franchise Mayor. I'm on TikTok as Dan Franchise. I'm on Facebook. I'm on everything, putting out a lot of content. And my biggest channel right now, I think, is Instagram. So Dan Franchise, DAN Franchise on Instagram. And I'd love to connect. Thanks again for listening. We'll see you on the next episode.
You're f***ing fired.
If you want to say those words to your boss, make sure you head on over to ifiredmybosspodcast.com and fill out the form to schedule a no-cost consultation. And if you enjoyed this episode, make sure to subscribe, leave a review, and share with a friend who might also want to fire their boss.